All right. Good to see everyone. Hi, Anya. Hopefully Susan finds her way back on. I messaged her, but who knows, technology. But Sonja, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you on tonight. So I met Sonja been a while ago now.
Has been.
At the time we were on the same triathlon team, so I was able to be at a couple races with her and then continue to follow her pro career, and we've stayed in touch and I've been a big fan. So it's been fun following someone in triathlon that I like actually know. It makes it a little more personable, and then I can ask silly questions like if she fangirls over other professionals at races because
Which
the
is a yes.
basics. So I think what we'll do tonight, our plan is we'll kind of just start in the beginning of Sonja's journey, her pro career, what she's doing now. And then obviously like plenty of time for questions because I know we've got a good group of folks on here to ask questions to about whatever. Um, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. So I guess Sonja, we'll get to like present day a little later, but do you want to tell us how you started? How'd you get into triathlon? What you were doing kind of sports wise growing up? And then what led you to triathlon?
Yeah, definitely. Gosh. I started out as a swimmer. So I think I started swimming when I was like 5. And that's really how I grew up. I did a little soccer and stuff in school too, but it was pretty much mostly swimming. I think my first triathlon, I was maybe 7 or 8. They had one at our local YMCA. So I guess that's like where it all goes way back to. But it wasn't pretty. And I kind of started doing it a little more seriously in high school over the summers when we were sort of taking a break from swimming. My aunt and uncle did an Ironman and were pretty serious. So I think, started the fire a little bit more. We would do long rides together and then they would go for another 100 miles after I did 30 miles with them. Um, and then in college, I swam for a D3 school, but that was definitely my priority. So I would just do triathlons in the summer. And yeah, I never trained through the year. I think I tried in college. I was running year round just to sort of supplement, but I didn't even know that you could ride a bike year round. I didn't know what a trainer was. So unless it was over 60 degrees, I pretty much started in April or May and then called it quits by September for riding a bike. So yeah, it was always just casual. Looking back on it, I think I'd been in touch with a few draft legal coaches in the area who had reached out at different times, and I always got super intimidated and didn't really want to be involved because the uniforms and everything kind of scared me. Like I was still, I don't know, getting changed into things in transition and wearing socks, and they're in these fancy uniforms and not, doing anything in transition, just jumping on their bike. And I was like, oh, I don't think I'm not on that level. But yeah, so it was a pretty casual start, I'd say. But I always enjoyed it. And then I started kind of getting into draft legal, maybe the end of high school. A coach reached out. And so that was my first experience with a coach too. And I was still only training in the summers. But he sort of taught me some technical skills, which I also didn't know was a thing, or, riding in a group. I had no idea. I was pretty sure I was the person that was running into the people's wheel in front of me because I didn't know what stop meant and stuff. So that was a good learning experience. But yeah, that was kind of my intro. Nothing too crazy, but it was just sort of always there, I guess. And I really enjoyed it. I still do enjoy it. But swimming was definitely my priority. And it wasn't like I was ever going to be a great swimmer, and I knew that, but that was my community. And triathlon wasn't really a thing in college yet either. There were a few clubs, but
Yeah, that's definitely evolved like rapidly.
it has. It's exciting to see. And a little bit piece of me is like, oh gosh, I wish I could be going to college now and being a part of
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
But
What events
no
did you
regrets.
swim in college?
I was distance. Yeah, the longer the better. I think I would do the 2 fly if I had to. Generally, the events that no one else wanted to do. 4 a.m., the mile, but definitely the distance freestyle, which I think translated very well for swimming in triathlon as well. I'm pretty sure if I was a breaststroker, I probably would have hated triathlons.
Fair.
Yeah.
So with the draft legal, what caught your eye about that? Because I think when you talk to like a regular person usually about triathlon, they don't often think draft legal unless maybe they've watched the Olympics. But I think a lot of people I run across to are like, oh, have you done an Ironman? Have you been to Hawaii? And so how was draft legal the route? Was it because of like your family involvement that they kind of knew about it, or?
Yeah, I had no idea that existed. I didn't even know that triathlon was in the Olympics at that point. And we're talking like 17, 18 years old, no idea. I didn't know there were professional triathletes who made a career out of this. I was sort of in the junior world, very on the outside of junior triathlon. And I think that's mostly draft legal. So like junior nationals, those types of things. And I actually went to junior nationals twice, I think. I think I came in fifth one year. And I, again, I packed up my bike in a cardboard box and said a prayer and shipped it across the country for this. And I'd never raced draft legal before. I practiced with my coach, but yeah, this was all just by the seat of my pants and did well enough. But yeah, I didn't really, even at that time, I think I didn't fully understand that this was a career for people and it existed in its own realm and that it was an Olympic pipeline. So I thought it was fun. I really enjoyed the kind of just biking in a group as opposed to grinding it out. I don't think I would have gotten as excited in triathlon if I wasn't kind of having that bike dynamic. And I didn't know bike racing existed either. And now seeing like crit racing, that just seemed, I think that would have been a lot of fun. But yeah, it was just, I lucked out with a coach who knew junior racing. And my mom, we were willing to travel a little bit for some races because it's not like New England has any draft legal races. So we went to 2 or 3, I think. And that was really my first intro to draft legal. And then I went to college and got more serious about swimming. So I didn't race any draft legal races then. And I never got back into it until a little bit after college. But yeah, it was kind of just this lucky, my coach knew the scene. I think he was the New England regional director. So he was sort of in USAT with that realm. And that's kind of what got me into it.
Interesting. So then, yes, swimming was the focus in college. Then post-college, I'm assuming you thought you were going to do something different following college than what you did.
I did. I moved to Germany to work there for a year, and I didn't swim at all. I tried. I joined a master's team, and my German was pretty good, but I remember not knowing at all what we were supposed to be doing. So that was fun. And I think after 2 or 3 swims, I was like, I don't really like this right now. I think I need a break. So I called it quits there, and it was just a nice chance to take a full year off of swimming. And I figured when I moved back, I would do triathlons in the summer again, but I was like, I'm never going to forget how to swim. We don't need to practice this. And I didn't have a bike. I mean, I had a bike to like commute to work and stuff, but it wasn't really a bike. It was a, 30-pound mountain bike. So I didn't bike for a year either, because I was like that my serious athletic career is over, and that's what most post-collegiates do. So yeah, I worked there for a year, which was great. And then when I moved back, I started working in downtown Boston at a pretty demanding job. And I think I might have done a few triathlons that summer I came home. And they were decent. I was just doing everything a little bit and getting by. And it was just fun to kind of be back in the community. And halfway through kind of that next year working in Boston, a coach reached out to me asking if I ever wanted to be coached. And I was like, I mean, I was working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. And I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. But I said yes, because what the heck? I always sort of had this dream of being a professional athlete, but I definitely didn't think it could be triathlon. I always thought I was going to be a professional swimmer. And then at 12, I figured that dream was not going to happen. So I figured, why not just give it a go? And we just sort of started working from there. And he was like, oh, I think you can get your pro card. And I was like, cool, what's that? And I think, I was a little naive, and that was probably for the best, because we were just training, and I had no idea what other people were doing, that there were other people doing this. I was just like, oh yeah, we're training for a draft legal race. Like, what the heck? Just fit it in when I can. But yeah, so the first year and a half, 2 years out of college, I thought that I was starting my career, and I was excited for that, and had no idea that I was going to get back into athletics nearly as seriously as I did.
Yeah, that's cool. I had kind of forgot you moved to Germany. I feel like I knew that, like that was part of you, but I had since forgot.
I think back on it, I'm like, wow, what a time. I mean,
Yeah,
that was already 8 years ago now, so
yeah.
time flies.
So what was the process for you like to get your pro card? Because, or maybe you can explain that briefly, because I know it can be a complicated, frustrating process, and there's a few ways to get that in the States.
Yeah, I still find it super confusing, and probably am not going to give the best explanation to it. And I know there are 2 kind of routes you can go. You can do it the long course way, and I don't know anything about that. But I know for short course, at least in the past, they have certain races that you can go to. I think there are 2 or 3 in the US over the course of the year, and they're already designated. The top 3 non-professional athletes will have the opportunity to take their pro card. And people definitely target these races. You know, that's a lot of post collegiates that kind of go into this program with USAT. They're training for them. So I remember we'd started talking about this, I think in September. That's when my coach was like, all right, let's pick a race. And so there's one in Claremont that at the time was, I think probably still is, really the most popular to try and get your pro card. And it's in March in Florida. So we decided to train for that race. And this was the first winter that I would ever be riding my bike the whole winter and running the whole winter, because I'd never run on a treadmill either. So that was, and it snows a lot because I was living in Massachusetts. But yeah, so we just decided to go for it. And I, again, had no idea what other people did. I wasn't on Instagram. I couldn't have said that. I couldn't even name a professional athlete. So we just sort of, I put my head down. I changed jobs, so I was able to just have kind of a regular 40-hour work week and put the time in with this as well. And it was a little bit closer to work. And we just put it in. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I remember we were flying down to Florida. And I was like, you know, just off to another triathlon, like super excited. I broke my derailleur because that was the first time I'd ever flown with a bike bag. And I did not know that, you know, bike bags, you should probably put a little extra padding in there. So I just packed it up and shipped it off like, this is going to be fine. So I remember panic driving with my mom, trying to find a bike shop the day before, just to fix it. Cause I couldn't even, I think, change a tire at that point. I had no idea how a bike worked. And I feel so much more advanced in that department now. And I look back on that time, I'm like, wow, we could have saved so much stress if I had just learned a little bit about bike maintenance. But you learn it over time. So yeah, it's a 2-day race for this one. And most of the people, I think, race both days, because 3 people can get it the first day and 3 people can get it the second day. Even if the same people race, it can go down. So it's like, all right, there's a pretty good chance, but most people don't get their pro card the first time they try to go for it. And I didn't have any experience really. And I remember the first day I swam to the wrong buoy. And I was so excited because I remember swimming and I'm like, I'm by myself. Like I must be way ahead of the pack. This is the greatest thing ever. I can't believe it. My coach is going to be so proud. My mom's going to be so proud. I can't wait to get out of the water and be like, Mom, look at me. And then I just look far across the water and I see the whole pack going to a different buoy because a boat almost ran me over. And I was just like, oh no, oh, they're going to be so mad. Oh, now I have to explain it. So I caught back up to the pack. I had a great bike and I managed to hang on the run. And I think I came in 3rd the first day. So I got my pro card because the first person was already a professional athlete. I actually got my pro card on the same day that Chelsea Sodaro got her pro card. So that's my one little, like, I know her, we raced together. But yeah, so that was just, I was kind of on cloud 9 and had no idea what accepting your pro card even meant. And I think you have about a year to say you want to turn pro. And if you don't, you can still race as an age grouper. But if you are a professional, if there's a professional race that day, you're not allowed to race an age group category. So I said yes, because I mean, what the heck? I had nothing to lose at that point. And then I raced the next day and did really well as well. So that kind of cemented all right, I feel like I sort of belong here. And then I did my first pro race and felt like I did not belong there at all. But
did you stay on course day 2?
I did, yes. I was very proud of myself that I have a long history of not staying on course for triathlons, but that could be a story for another time. Yeah,
fine. It still happens.
I had to call my mom once because I was so off course and I couldn't find my way back on a Sunday morning at a pizza shop. That was probably my proudest moment as a triathlete. I was 17 or 18 too. It's not like I was 12.
Yeah. That's funny. So what was your first pro race?
I raced, so after that, I want to say it was in April. So really only about a month and a half later, probably in Richmond, because we could drive down. And I was working, I couldn't really take as much vacation time because it was a pretty new job. And I'd already taken a good bit of vacation time. And I didn't really have a huge budget for it. So we decided to drive down for this. And yeah, that was, again, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I kind of thought it would be the same as the race in Florida, which was, what do they call those?
Like the EMDR?
EDR. Yes, elite development. So I thought I was going to be kind of an elite development level. which was good. Again, that I think I do best when I go in totally naive to what these races are going to be like. And I just remember I would thought like, I'm a strong swimmer, this should be fine. And those girls do and race the swim and still race the swim as if it's a boxing match. And I remember just being absolutely pummeled and thinking I was drowning, and then wondering how anyone who doesn't have swim skills could possibly get through this. And it was the worst experience of my life. And I was like, I hate this sport. I'm never doing this again. This is terrible. Just get out of the water, Sonja, and then you're tell everyone you're done. And we got out, and obviously I kept racing the race because that's what you do, and I get caught up in it. And I ended up having a really great race. I think I came in 10th, which was kind of exciting for my first official pro race. And I loved it, and I got hooked, and I now accept that the swim is just the way it is, especially for draft legal. But yeah, that was a great kind of start to the whole pro circuit at the lowest level. They have kind of 3 tiers in draft legal triathlon. So that was sort of the 3rd tier. That's just a continental level. But it was a pretty big race. I think there were probably 30 or 40 girls doing it. So yeah, it was a nice start. And then that year I did maybe 3 or 4, all pretty close, nothing too crazy far away, if I remember well, like one out in Des Moines, just to kind of gain experience. And I think I was almost always in the top 10. So it was a good, pretty consistent first year, and just being able to kind of train all year round and seeing what that did for me was huge. I don't think I ever really understood how consistent training makes such a big difference. So that was exciting to see too.
Yeah. So then what was your, I guess, short course career like, and then your transition then to middle/long distance triathlon?
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier. I don't think I ever considered long course. I don't think I ever really wanted that. I felt like short course was a lot of work. So to have to do double the distance seemed too much work. And I had a pretty good short course career. I had a lot of injuries, which was a pity. I think I never really found what my right training load was. And then when I did really find that groove, COVID came around. So I was injured all through 2019. And then I had one race at the beginning of 2020, and I did the best I'd ever done. And I was like, this is my year. This is awesome. And then we were in Florida waiting for our second race when everything shut down, and they canceled the race the night before. And we were trying to get out of Orlando the same day that Disney had shut down. And it was just like, okay, it's 2 weeks. I can make this work. And I quit my job a year and a half before to train full time. So I kind of made a financial commitment to this as well. So it was a little bit more stressful just knowing that I can't even make money or show what I can do if I can't race. And then, like everyone, it just took away everything for about a year. And draft legal was a lot longer to come back race-wise than long course. And I'm not really sure why. Maybe it was because we're close together on the bikes, but I think everyone's close together on the swim. And I remember the beginning of 2021, there weren't really a lot of domestic races, and I didn't love flying overseas just because with COVID, it was a pain, and financially it didn't make sense. But there were a lot of half Ironman races in the US. So I was like, oh, well, what if we just try that? I mean, I go for long runs. I go for long bike rides. I should be able to do this. So I raced a draft legal race in March in Florida, and then I signed up for 70.3, I think it's Haines City, and it was postponed. So it ended up being in April that year. So I had 6 weeks to train, which I thought was plenty, and it definitely was not. And I remember doing that half Ironman. I came out of the water first, and I was like, this is my sport. This is it. I've switched over. And then over the course of the bike ride, I only had a road bike that was not set up for a comfortable TT position. I had clip-on aero bars, and I thought I could hold that for 56 miles. And about 10 miles to go, my body was like, no, we can't hold this anymore. So I think I limped my way back into transition. And all I remember on the run, it was really hot. I made it through the first loop, and I was telling my husband, like, I'm out. I can't do this. I quit. And he's like, no, you have one more lap. You don't quit now. And I was like, oh no, I mean the sport. I'm quitting. I'm done. I hate this. And I walked a lot, and I finished, and I slept the whole car ride home. I don't know. It was like this blurry fit days of long course trauma. And then about a day later, I was like, well, that's it. I'm never doing draft legal again. So it was a fun, I'm so glad it just sort of organically happened, because I'd never really considered training. And my coach at the time only had short course athletes. And when I'd started with him, he was like, I am a short course coach. Like, this is what we do. And that's why I picked him. So it was new for both of us, but I loved it. The swim was not aggressive. That was really nice. Everyone was a lot just more chill. Like we're all racing our own race. Let's just go out there and have fun. Um, and the longer distance definitely suited me better. So after that race, I was like, let's just find some long course races, take a good couple months really to train and then get back into it. I ended up borrowing my aunt's TT bike from the one that she actually raced her Ironman in that I'd watched 10 years earlier. So this was a 2010 felt. And that was my second 70.3 was on that. I did Boulder. And it was, miles better than any clip-on aero bars could do. A TT bike was so comfortable. But yeah, and so after that, I was like, I don't really feel like I need to go back to draft legal. And I was definitely a lot better at long course, so that helped too.
Yeah. So to rewind a bit, what went into the decision quitting your job? Because I'm sure there was lots of conversations and thought that went into that.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. I didn't really love my job. It was good. I loved the people I worked with, but it wasn't something that I thought was going to be my career forever. I was in marketing, just kind of managing events and stuff. So it was fine. And I just felt like I was going home at lunchtime every day to nap for a half hour because I was so exhausted. And everyone's like, oh, where do you go for lunch every day? And like, home to sleep because I luckily lived close enough. And I just would nap in my bed and then set my alarm. And then like 30 minutes later, groggily try to go back to work. And it just didn't really feel sustainable. And like anyone who's trying to train, even at a lower level for any triathlon, it's a lot of work. And so I think the 4 a.m. wake ups and everything were just getting to me and I was exhausted. And so I was getting married 6 months later. So I was like, hey, we got to talk about this. You're going to marry someone who's about to quit their job. That's not really that fair. But my husband's always been super supportive. So we just decided like it was now or never. And if, 20 years from now, was I ever going to look back and say, oh, I really regret not going for it, even if I did horribly. No, I wasn't going to regret that. So it just kind of seemed like the right time. And I could see that I was getting kind of consistently better too. So I felt like more time to recover more than anything was going to just really help. So yeah, it was stressful. But even when I made the decision, I kind of knew it was just the right one.
Yeah. That's how you know you made a right decision, right?
Yeah.
You're not like sick to your stomach about it after.
Exactly. I was pretty sick to my stomach going in to try and tell my boss.
They're like, you're
But she
gonna
was
do
also
what?
yes, yep. But no, everyone at work was so supportive as well. So it was all around a good decision.
Yeah. All right. So then it was 2021 when you started 70.3s. Then right
Yeah.
post COVID. It seemed like it
Yep.
was longer than that.
It does. I really only raced 70.3s for a year.
I know, that's crazy. It seems so much longer in my mind.
Yeah.
So then tell us about that. And I feel like, I mean, that's where you've got some like impressive results in my opinion.
Yeah, that was kind of just a wild ride. I mean, I feel like for anyone who gets into triathlon or tries something new or then tries long course for the first time, I mean, it's a whole learning curve on its own. I thought I knew what I was doing. And that was a very humbling experience. I did not know what I was doing. And there was a lot to learn and to just kind of get into a new routine. But it was fun because it was exciting and new. And my coach also really enjoyed the transition. And we had a teammate at the same time who was in draft legal and transitioned with me. So it was kind of fun to have both of us, two women, doing races and kind of racing the same women and seeing, what training is working. And a little bit was experimentation, but that also made it good. So yeah, I took a couple months after my first one to really train for the distance. And like I said, I raced in Boulder in, I think that was August. So it was a good couple months. And then I did, I think, 2 more that year. And that year I want to say 10th and then 7th and 7th. And just coming in the top 10 was really exciting. That was the first time I'd earned money in a race. So that was very exciting. And I had said to my coach that 2021 was my last year because I'd always said that I was going to race professionally about 4 or 5 years. And at the end of 2021, just based on where we were, I was still riding a borrowed 2010 TT bike. I was like, I can't retire yet. Like, I feel like there's so much more and I don't even need to change my training yet. Like, I'm just seeing so much improvement every single day. And I was riding more than I ever had before. And definitely for me, this time on the bike was making a difference. And for draft legal, it's more power as opposed to endurance. So just getting in those 3-4 hour rides was making a huge difference. So 2021, he came to me at the end and was like, oh, so I'm assuming you're not retiring yet. I was like, no, we will give it another year. And I bought another used TT bike, but a 2017 Cannondale, and one that was better fitted to my size, and a little more aero and lighter. So that was kind of my, all right, commitment to the year. Let's see what we can do. And yeah, I feel like I just learned so much every single race, whether it was just nutrition, because that was never something I had to consider before. And I definitely made mistakes, and they did not go well, as also anyone knows. That, you know, black hole you kind of get in when you've realized you did not eat enough or drink enough earlier. It's just easy fix for another race, but it makes for a pretty painful lesson to learn. Yeah, and I just, in the next year, I started getting some top fives, and that was really exciting. And yeah, I think some of my best, I came in a lot of fourth places last year. Somehow that was my spot to be. And I never really made a top 3 podium, but I was pretty excited about some fourth places and where I got last year. That definitely gave me the fulfillment I was looking for.
Yeah, you had some good races. You touched on it a bit, but what was the differences in the training like from the short course to the long course?
Gosh, we biked so much more. I didn't even know that people could bike that much. Again, I was pretty naive. I went from biking maybe 5 or 6 hours a week to like 11, 13 hours a week. And I love the trainer. I never knew it existed. And then when I discovered it, I was like, I love this. I just loved getting in the basement, putting music on, and hammering out 3 or 4 hours. And I think that really helped just with this steady power, as painful it could sometimes be. But yeah, so the increase in bike with just hours every week was a lot. And then my run pretty much stayed similar. I've kind of always struggled with run health. And so we did a little bit of a gradual increase, but my long runs kind of stayed the same. And then my swimming went down a lot, because in draft legal, the goal is to get out of the water first so you can be with the front pack. And in long course, it's nice, but it's not necessary. And not swimming 6 to 7 days a week was magnificent. So I was kind of swimming 3 or 4, and, you know, you have a bad swim, it's not the end of the world. A little bit more longer distance stuff, not trying to do these hundreds racing every time to be the first one out. So yeah, just the type of training and the distances changed. And I like that. I was kind of tired of these really intense sessions, and we would still do some intensity, but I enjoyed it a lot more because I feel like it wasn't all or nothing. And if I didn't have that intensity, I was never gonna get anywhere in a race.
Yeah. And at what point did you moved out to Colorado for a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so
That
when
was
did that happen?
before so at the end of 2019, I decided that we decided that we were going to move to Colorado. Our lease was ending, and we knew we were going to live in New England, because we're both from here, but we just wanted to live in a different state for a while. So my coach is in Colorado Springs, and he doesn't really have a team there, but he had a couple of kids that still were in the area, and they would get together once or twice a week for sessions, which is kind of what I was looking for. So we decided we were going to move there. And then my husband found out that he got a position in Poland, because he travels for work for 8 months. So we were like, all right, you move to Colorado, he moves to Poland. 8-hour time difference, no big deal. And then COVID hit, so he got stuck in Poland, and I was living in Colorado by myself, not training with my coach because no one was getting together. So the first year of Colorado was not ideal. I ended up coming back and living with my mom because there wasn't really anything else to do. And I didn't have any friends there yet because it was 2 months after I'd moved there. But after he came back to Colorado and we really settled in, it was really nice. It was fun to just have some different roads, and different kind of training environment, and be with my coach. You know, we touch base at least once a week in person doing things. And I'd never really had a training environment before for triathlon, and that's what I grew up with swimming. So having a little bit of that was sort of reinvigorated how I felt about racing. And I tried some bike races, especially during COVID when there weren't any triathlons. So that was fun and helped me work on that. And we stayed there from 2020 to the end of 2021. So that's where I did the first half of my long course career. And I was really nervous when we moved back. I know that altitude made a huge difference for me. I could really feel the effects, and certainly my running and my biking were just so much more powerful when we would come down. So I was really afraid moving home back to sea level that would affect my results in a race. But I feel like 2022 was my best year. So I don't think it did too much.
So what was your favorite race in 2022?
Ooh, I would probably say Eagle Man in Maryland because that was kind of my breakthrough race. I had a decent swim, nothing special. It was in a bay. I have a pretty big fear of the ocean, so I wasn't thrilled. If it's not a lake swim, I get a lot of anxiety. It was the first time I was racing in Sarah True, so I think I was texting you, Hunter,
That
right
was the
before.
one I was like,
Yes.
are you fangirling? Because I'm
And
freaking
I was
out
just
right now.
like this. I mean, she's been around for a while too, and I remember she's a New Englander, so that was just the coolest thing ever. So I was starstruck the first part of that race. I think I lined up next to her, behind her, and I was like, "This is as cool as it gets. Doesn't matter what happens, but this
I
is just
peaked.
it."
This is
Yes.
it.
Yep. And we got on the bike. Oh, the conditions were miserable. They almost postponed the race because it was like thunder and lightning chances. It was drizzly and rainy, not particularly cold, but kind of windy and just really gross, which is my favorite type of race conditions. I hate the sun. I hate the heat. I love cold and miserable. So I got on the bike and I remember just being, oh, my power meter didn't turn on. So I was like, that's not great. I sort of rely on that to know that we don't blow up halfway through a race. And I was just like, well, we're just gonna hammer it out and see what happens. Whatever happens, happens. And I think the whole time I spent just thinking that I wasn't trying hard enough. So I had to try a little harder because what if I wasn't at my race watts? And I passed a bunch of girls at about 10, 15 miles. And I always thought there was someone in front of me. So I spent the whole 56 miles chasing down this invisible person that I was convinced was beating me. And then I got off the bike and everyone's like, you're first woman, first woman. And I was like, wait, what? So that was my other like, oh my gosh. And then Sarah True immediately passed me and I was like, that was cool. I'll take that. And I had the best run I'd ever had. I came in fourth, third kind of passed, and I was like, oh, bummer, there goes the podium. But running's never been my strong suit. So staying in the top 5 was really cool. And yeah, I think I got better as the run went on. And I just hadn't put together a half Ironman yet where I felt like I was strong from start to finish. And that was really the first end of the run where I was like, that's how you're supposed to, like, that's how a race is supposed to feel. Everyone else talks about this. And I usually cross a finish line and I'm ready to just keel over and die. And that was like, yes, I did it. I think I might've cried a little bit crossing the finish line because I was so emotional. But yeah, that was probably the best race. It was such a surprise. I really didn't think that I could pull something off like that. And I just gotten a new job or started working again in January that year. And it was a little overwhelming trying to balance working again with training. And I was kind of nervous. I didn't have vacation time yet. So we had driven down and I was trying to balance like getting my hours in with pre-race stuff. And the meeting's always at a super inconvenient time for people who work. So it was kind of like it was worth trying to balance all this. And I do belong. So that was probably my best one.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, I remember texting you being like,
I
and then
think we
we were
texted a lot
racing and I was like,
before and after.
yeah, I was like, she's with Sarah. That's so cool.
After, if she ever watches this, she told me, she's like, wow, that was such an amazing bike. Like, you are a powerhouse. And I was like, oh, I think I could be like, this is it. If I drop dead today,
This is
I did
it.
what I needed to do.
I love it. And
But I
then
would still love to know the power data from that bike ride because it was probably the best I've ever done. But
yeah, it
no
will
one will ever
forever be a
know.
mystery.
Yep.
Then my last question before we talk about like your transition into present day. If anyone follows long course triathlon, you've probably heard of Breakfast with Bob. And so how was that experience?
A little surreal because I'd heard about him before and I definitely watched some Kona ones years before because I don't know if that's where it all started, but that's what I always associated it with. So when I found out that he was doing those interviews, I think the first one was Daytona. No, Miami, last year, because I had an interview with him, Miami and Daytona. I was like, you want to talk to me? And I was just so nervous. And it was a pretty cool setup. I mean, he's there in his Hawaiian shirt and there are the lights and they've got the questions. And he was so easy to talk to and he just, makes you feel comfortable. But yeah, I felt like I was among greatness when I was having that chat. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, if you guys have never watched Breakfast with Bob, he goes to all like the big races. He's interviewed like every professional triathlete and from what I've heard, right, it's like an honor to like get to talk to him, and it's a really cool thing when you like get the email, right? He like emails you to set up the
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing. I wasn't even expecting it. They said he was going to be there at Miami, and I was like, well, there's some pretty big names here, so that's cool for them. I mean, I never get asked for interviews, and then I got the email, short, curt, to the point, and I was like, that's for me. Okay, we got to reply to this right away. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah. And I think it is cool, like, I don't know, it's like a weird little triathlon thing, like, "Oh, is I'm breakfast with Bob." Like, Mark Dubrick, he was, like, the same way, like, "Oh, finally," right? And it's just cool to see people, like, post about it after, and then yeah, then you're, like, watching it and you see, like, all these, like, top pros, and then you're like, "Wait a minute, I know this person." Like
Yeah, and I think one of them, I don't remember which one it was, either Miami or Daytona. It might have been Daytona, and like Vincent Lewis was walking out of his interview as I was walking in, and I was just like, oh wow, cool. Okay, cool. Act natural.
Yeah, I belong here. I'm here.
Yes. Yep.
That's
So very
awesome.
fun. Good
Alright,
bucket
so
list.
then talk about so you had started a job your last year of long course racing, and then what was, like, the decision to get out? It sounds like you already had kind of your mind made up to give it another year, but was it that easy, or was you questioning things at the end of
Yeah.
that year?
It's hard. I mean, I I kind of figured that 2022 was gonna be my last year, and I feel like every time I did really well, it just reinforced the fact that I was doing what I had set out to do 5 years ago when I took my pro card, and that was to see what I could do and to do the best that I could do with what I had. Because it's so easy to lose yourself in training and sacrifice everything. And I made it a point to never give up family time and friend time. Obviously, I cut back on things, but it's really important to me to always be balanced. So I probably sacrificed some speed and wins and who knows what, just because I wasn't gonna be completely committed in terms of just eat, sleep, breathe triathlon. But I know myself too well, and that never would have gone well for me. And I think I might have gone down that path a little bit, and that's the year I got really injured. Um, and so every time I did really well in 2022, I was just like, this is what it feels like. And it's just, this is what I wanted. And I feel like this contentment and fulfillment in my heart. And I have so many other things that I want to do after. Because it takes up your whole life, whether it's just making sure you're stretching and rolling out and getting enough sleep and eating properly and preparing those meals. And we had bought a house as well. So, between work, house, everything, it was a lot. And I wanted to be able to commit to kind of some other things in my life a bit more, and not just feel like, oh shoot, so if I have this at this time, I got to get up at 3:15 so I can be on the bike by 3:45 to do this, which I was really good at. But I didn't want to have to do that anymore. So that kind of helped make it an easier decision for me. Um, and then the last big race for me last year was Worlds. And I had the race of my life at Worlds. And so I think when I finished that race, I was like, I could get better, but it would take sacrificing a lot to be able to get better. And I don't really want to sacrifice that. So I finished out the year. I think, what was my last one? Daytona. That was a terrible race. But even with a terrible race as my last race, I still knew that this was what I really wanted. And it was hard because a lot of people were like, oh, you're sacrificing your talent. Or you hear these people that say, you're giving it all up for what? For nothing. But I know that this is what I wanted. And so it was a little hard at the beginning to stay true to what I knew I wanted. And now, even like a month out, I didn't have any regrets. And certainly now, I mean, we got a dog, so that takes up all my time, and I have no regrets there. But I'm doing everything, and I'm still swimming and biking and running, but just like 2 or 3 times a week each. So I know I'm not burnt out from it. I still love it. I just am doing it in moderation, and it's kind of nice to not have to do all 3 in one day. Or if I have a day off, we just have a day off, and it's not the end of the world. And those are things that I probably should have done in my pro career as well, because it is not the end of the world. But yeah, it was tough, but I knew it was right for me. And luckily it was something that I had been thinking about for a really long time. So it was not like a split-second decision. And I knew I always wanted to go out on my own terms. I feel like most pros, either you retire because you get old, or you get injured, or you get burnt out. And I didn't want it to be any of those 3 things. So that was my goal. And I feel like I did that.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Like I like appreciate, I guess, like the maturity in it all, right? But it's like, hey, I knew what I wanted. I didn't want to sacrifice like with my family, like the important things in life, right? Like racing is fun, but it's not our lives.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's hard
so
to
I
have
think
that perspective, anybody
yeah.
to have that perspective, no matter what level you're at when you're in the thick of it too. And it's so easy to just kind of go
And
down
then
the
you're
rabbit
doing
hole.
well on top of that. That's why I was wondering if it was like a little more challenging because then you kept like getting the results that you had worked like all this time for.
Was, but it's just I looked at how much more work I put in 2022, and I was like, to get better than that, I'd have to put in even more work. And I think I was a little burnt out, and probably the type of burnt out that like a true month off would have just done me wonders, which anyone can take. Um, but I didn't really want to have to put in that much more work anymore. And so I feel like that was kind of a first indication, like, oh, if we start pushing it when you don't really want to do it, that's when you get injured or you just
Yeah.
get crabby or you hate it. And I would never want to hate it because I do love it.
Yeah. So you're still swimming, biking, and running. I'm trying to convince her to race like cyclocross and gravel. Actively working on it. And she's volunteering at Western Mass at the
Yep.
run aid station, which she told me about today and I'm excited about.
I'm pretty excited. Like I love the volunteers at races, and especially the run aid station workers. Like they're so energetic. So I hope I can channel some of the volunteers that I've seen in the past. But like, I feel like that's what gets you through a race. So I hope I can be that for you, Hunter. I will be there cheering you on.
Yes. All right. So I think that kind of takes us to present day, unless you have anything else to add to that.
Not really. That's kind of it in a 45-minute nutshell.
So yeah, what questions do you guys have? Jane, I know you've got some lined up.
Yeah, I'm chomping at the bit.
I love questions.
Okay. I was curious, when you were training for long course as a pro, what % of your time was spent training on the bike trainer versus training on the road?
So I was probably a little bit of an exception because I don't know if I've met many people like what I did. But like I said, I loved the trainer, and I would get I'm a perfectionist. So I would get very frustrated on the road because like stop signs are annoying. They ruin my groove. Red
Mess up
lights
the
are
average.
Yeah, they ruin my groove. So I probably did like 95% of my training on the trainer.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit later, I was trying to get out, especially in Colorado, it was a little easier. We just had good roads for being an aero. And I was a little nervous in aero, especially to start, because that was really new to me. So like the New England roads for the most part are atrocious.
Not to mention the drivers.
Yes, exactly. But in Colorado, we kind of had this loop that, was about a 20-minute drive away, but there's no one out there. It's sort of farm country. So once a week I would try to get out there and do that. So I guess it was more paid, like 75% on the trainer, 25% not. Like I said, I don't bike outside when it's under 60 degrees. So, after that, it was 100% on the trainer. And then last year, yeah, it was probably like 95 to 98% on the trainer. And then once a month I would go outside. And we live in Central Mass, so it's really not a big deal. Like there are plenty of roads. But yeah, I liked the convenience of it. And with trying to balance work too. If you have a 3-hour ride, it takes 3 hours, but when you're outside, it takes 3 hours and 15 minutes or 3.5, and you never get what you need in it. So like I was trying to really be efficient. Definitely not for everyone. I think it takes a special type of mind to enjoy the trainer that much. And I only ever had one playlist too, so I listened to the same songs over and over. But it did help a lot for like strength. I feel like my biking got so much better by just going out on the trainer every single day.
And, talking to other pros, percentage wise, do you think most of them spend the time on the trainer like you did, or do they get out on the road a lot more?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I don't think I ever talked to anyone who spent that much time on the trainer. I know most of them would get out probably at least half the time, if not more. I know when you're training that much too, it's just a little stimulus makes a big difference. But yeah, they definitely ride outside more.
Okay. Do you want me to keep asking questions, Hunter? I used to be a corporate recruiter, so I'm used to asking questions. So
she's interviewing you right now. She's only 2 days retired, so
I know.
She's still in the grind of work.
I know.
It's been a while since I've been through an interview, but I could be ready for it.
Yeah, no, my kids are like, quit asking all these questions. I go, that's what I do. I was curious, first of all, where did you go to college? Was it WPI?
Yes. Yep.
I saw that online. Yeah. There is masters swimming, and they have a lot of the swim meets at WPI. They had the New England's there this past March.
Yes, I didn't race that one. I raced they have one in December usually,
Yeah.
which I've raced a few years. So it's funny, when I went to WPI, that pool did not exist yet. So we only had a 20-yard pool. And so that was a weird experience. It was 4 lanes, 20 yards. So like every 100 takes 5 laps. You'd think our turns were great, and they were atrocious.
Yeah.
And we had a huge swim team. So there were anywhere from 8 to 10 people in a lane. And I did some of my best times training in that pool. But we all loved each other, and it was, I think, just a huge community thing. But no, the new pool came around halfway through my time there. So I did 2 years.
It's nice. It's really nice.
I had the dorm actually right above where they were building it for a year. So
Okay.
that was some fun 7 a.m. wake ups. But we called it the tub. We swam in the tub, and then we got the nice new pool. It's nice, but it's cold.
Yeah. Yeah,
But they
it's a
do have
little
a
cold,
masters team.
but I love the area. You know, you could, there was always room to do warm ups and cool downs while the meet was going on. So
Yeah.
I
Yep.
thought that was a nice facility. Did you ever compete in a pro race, draft legal in Bermuda? Because we were at the age group race there in 2018, maybe.
Mhm. I did not. I really wanted to, and it's funny because in 2019, my husband's family went on a cruise to Bermuda, and we went with them, and that was the year I was really injured. But they had this like countdown to the next WTS Bermuda there. So I took a picture with it, and I was like, this is so exciting. I'd love to be a part of this. And then COVID happened, so that Bermuda race didn't happen, but I would have loved to have raced there, because I swam in actually the pool. I think they only have one pool there. It's up on a hill, and like Flora Duffy's name is there.
Oh yeah, she's a superstar there, and she
yeah,
won.
and I would say she was on a bus, like just on these posters on buses and things too. And I was like, this is how triathlon should be in the US.
It was amazing.
I didn't race, but you could feel it. It was cool.
Yeah, no, it really was. And Flora won. She dominated the race. Her mom was in my age group. I had a bike crash, and her mom, I think, won the age group. I got a third, but I was like, oh, if I could have beaten Flora Duffy's mom. So I was kind of fangirling over the whole Flora Duffy thing.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful, beautiful country. Also curious, this is getting out there. What's your take on doping in professional triathlon?
Oh, yeah.
If you don't want to answer it, I'm okay with
No,
it.
I haven't really put as much thought into it either, because I feel like the whole circumstances now came out like after I've been a little bit removed. And I'm like following along with tri community stuff, but not as much as I mean, I felt like I was just so in it before. But yeah, it makes me upset, because everyone I met, it just seemed so pure. And like, that's, it's not cycling where I feel like pro cycling, you just hear these stories, and you think everyone must be doing things. And it's sort of socially accepted. And I just never felt like that in our community at any level, but certainly not at the pro level, and all of the pros I've met. And like at Worlds was my first experience at really a top class race with dozens of professional women that have won gold medals, like world championship titles. And they were all so wonderful and just there to do the best that they could with what they had. And you just never get that feeling of people would do something illegal to make themselves faster. So I feel like more than anything, it's just kind of shocking. And I didn't know Colin in particular. But I feel like if I did, just be like, oh gosh, how sad. So yeah, it just kind of makes me sad. And yet I still believe that it is a pretty pure sport, and that everyone that I raced against was racing with what they had. But yeah, it just makes me sad.
Yeah. Well, we have a book club for Women on Wheels, and we're reading Kara Goucher's book.
I've heard it's really good.
It's fantastic. I've read it twice now, and she talks about that, and then the follow-up with her coach getting removed from, running through Safe Sport and the FBI and everything else. So, it's intriguing. It's just what people will do. But I also understand on the professional level, there's money at stake for people at the high end, and sponsorships and all that. And running in particular, reading Kara's book, she had to do so many races. She was a Nike sponsored athlete that there's a lot of pressure to perform. So anyway, but I think I've dominated enough over here, but thank you for, answering my questions and your time here. This is really interesting to get your take on your journey from being a youth triathlete to becoming a professional. It's great to hear. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad. I was so afraid I'd be boring. I told Hunter before.
No, definitely not. It's very interesting.
Maddie, you got a question?
Yeah. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years with training? Do you have any goals switching it up, or what are you thinking?
I don't know. I think I fluctuate some mornings where I'm like, maybe I do want to do an Ironman. And I'm like, no, you don't, Sonja. You don't want to do an Ironman. You just know. Maybe my aunt and uncle did an Ironman in their 50s after their kids had kind of grown up. And I was like, maybe that's how I would consider doing that. I don't know. The first couple months, I was like, I don't want to race. I just can't. The thought of a start line kind of gets me a little emotional. But now I raced a part of a relay. It was like a fun pentathlon out in the Berkshires in April. So that forced me to get back on my bike because they wanted to win and I had to do the road bike section. And so that kind of got me back into the local race community and I really loved it. And I got competitive, but just with myself and the people there. And it didn't get me sort of the emotional or the nerves that I used to have at the start of triathlon. So I was like, okay, this is a good start. So I feel like this year, I don't know if I would do any triathlons. I say that now and I'll probably sign up for one.
Yeah.
Since I'm doing all three sports. But probably a couple
You're like
5Ks.
season opener next weekend or this weekend, whatever it is.
I did not just look to see when the dates were. But yeah, I feel like it's what I retired at the beginning of December and it's now May. And now I feel like I could really race all summer if I wanted to. It's more of a time thing too. I was telling Hunter, our dog just broke her paw. So she's been pretty high maintenance now. So I don't know how much training I can get in. But yeah, I think triathlons will always be a part of my life. So I hope over the next couple of years, just kind of the local tries, probably sprints and Olympics. I don't see myself going back to long course super soon just because of the time commitment. But I know it'll always sort of be there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Anya's on here and she's like a bike packer. Very different than triathlon.
Oh, that is a whole different animal.
I just love listening to, the host, life story and how you got into it. It's very interesting. I admire it.
Well, thank you.
Glad you could hop on, Anya.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I love doing these talks, like with people that are, better than us, because it's like, well, yeah, like you went off course and you messed up nutrition before, right? It's like we put people on this like pedestal and, I follow triathlon like very closely but then it's like, well, no, like they're humans too, right? Like we've all been somewhere and done something silly, and I think it's just like such good reminders, and then like, hey, you can still be successful, right? Like
I think that was the biggest thing for me racing at a top level, especially in long course where, there aren't different tiers. Like Flora Duffy shows up at a race or Lucy Charles, and like you talk to them and they all have these stories and they all make the mistakes in these races still. That people are still making wrong turns or losing all their water bottles on their bike.
Crashing going into transition.
Exactly. And it's, as much as it's terrible because you feel badly, it's just a little like refreshing to know that they're all human. We all go through those things. And they happen to the absolute best and they happen to the newbies. And it's how you roll with it.
Yeah. So then I guess, let's wrap up with that. Because we do have, because of some of us in the group, we talk about triathlon a lot and love getting folks into triathlon. So is there anything you would say to like a newcomer to triathlon, just getting started? Any quick tips of wisdom?
Oh gosh. I mean, I would just say enjoy it because it is fun, and not compare yourself to what other people are doing, because there's a big difference between someone who's been doing it for 20 years and has learned all of the little tips or has been able to buy all the gadgets on their bike. You can't compare yourself to them, and it's not worth it. Or ever like looking and seeing the person with the disc wheel and being like, oh my gosh, they're going to beat me. And you have no idea what they can do. Because I'm very good at looking at people with disc wheels because I never had a disc wheel and being like, oh gosh, I can't compete with that. And then I get intimidated in my head and it's just a downhill spiral from there. So it's more of just, racing your own race. And transitions, always think about transitions because that's the easiest speed out there. And I've been preaching that for a long time. But if you ever want to take off time, you can always make transitions faster.
I love it. Those are good things. Yeah, triathlon's intimidating. I did 2 intro to tri talks within the past month, and I'm just like, yeah, you'll look around transition and you'll be intimidated, but like just you need almost like blinders on because it's like people will look like so fast with all the arrow stuff, and you're like, it's
So
okay.
fast. Yeah, and you see some of these bikes and it's so hard not to compare. And it's just like, how can you ever compete against someone who's riding something like that? It's very easy to do, but
Now I'm gonna tell them, hey, Sonja was a professional, did really good, and had a used 2017 bike competing against people like Sarah True, who probably has like 3 brand new tri bikes.
yep. And I had the best bike,
Yeah.
bike time too. So
Yeah.
Can't
not
go
always
wrong
about
with
the
a
gear.
Cannondale. That's my road bike. It's a Cannondale.
I would say my first road bike was a Cannondale. That was
Yeah.
my baby.
Yeah, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Any more questions? No? Well, Sonja, thank you so much. It was
Thank you
nice
so much.
catching up. I'll see
Yeah.
you in a few weeks on the run course.
Yes, I'm very excited.
I hope your
Make sure I
doggy
get a
heals
good cold
fast.
cup of water.
I'll make sure that I'm the one that serves you.
Good luck with your dog. I hope
Thank
he or
you.
she heals fast. Yeah.
So do we.
All
Thank
right,
you.
everyone. Thank you for coming on and enjoy the rest of your night.
You as
Thanks.
well.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Bye-bye.